Okay, you may be seated. Okay, let the record reflect that the defendant is present along with counsel for the defendant, assistant state attorney, both sides ready to proceed. All right, let's return to jury. Okay, state recognized presence of jury. And the defense?
Yes, sir, we do.
All right. Ms. Burdick, you may continue.
Thank you. Detective Osborne, I believe we ended by talking about your evaluating information that was preserved and extracted from the hard drive.
That's correct.
What information does NCASE provide?
When you look at a hard drive, a complete view, it's called a physical view of a hard drive. It shows you every bit on the hard drive, every bit of information that's there, every bit of information that's ever been there that is still stored on the drive. So I can see what the user sees in allocated space. I can see system files that the operating system uses to operate itself. I can see the file system on the hard drive that's stored and used by the operating system, and I can also see the deleted areas called unallocated space.
On the HP in particular, the Hewlett-Packard, before you, or perhaps during the process of your evaluation with NCASE, do you record the date and time that is on the computer when you receive it?
Yes.
How is that done?
That is done by booting the computer into an area called the BIOS. Once I remove the hard drive from the computer, I'll power it on, and there's a function key that will get me into that system area. Then I can access the system clock and get the current date and time that it is set to.
And did you do that for the HP?
I did.
Okay. And can you give us the data that you were able to obtain, and then as it related to the current date and time?
The actual date and time that I conducted that was July the 18th, 2008 at 12:13 p.m. The system clock setting of the computer at that time was July the 18th, 2008 at 12:13 p.m. So it was right on the money.
What sort of software was loaded onto that computer?
Microsoft Windows XP is the operating system that was loaded there. Windows Internet Explorer was loaded as an application to access the internet. Mozilla Firefox is also another method of getting onto the internet. It's another browser. Microsoft applications for creating Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, things like that. Facebook, MySpace had been accessed and loaded into the user areas. AIM, AOL, peer-to-peer social networking sites were also the applications were loaded on. Yahoo Messenger was also included, and many others that I don't recall and didn't record.
Okay. The Microsoft XP program, is that what, as best you could tell from your evaluation, that's what was loaded onto the computer at the time of purchase? Can you tell that?
If it's been completely overwritten, I would not be able to tell that, but it appears that the computer was purchased and came with the HP computer, although if it was overwritten, I wouldn't be able to tell that. The XP, Windows XP, that is loaded and being used on the HP computer was installed on that computer in September of 2005, so it had been in use on that computer for quite a while.
Are you familiar with whether or not the Hewlett-Packards come standard with some form of Microsoft software.
It's common to find that, such as in any computer store, whatever store you want to buy the computer from, that it would come loaded with Windows. You could load it with whatever you wanted to, I suppose, but we see them very frequently with the Windows operating system on them.
You had mentioned another browser, an internet browser. What was that?
Mozilla Firefox.
Okay. And is that something that you have to download?
You can download it from the internet.
Were those the two access points to the internet on the HP?
Those were two of them. I believe there was one other one called Safari, which is typically an Apple MacBook application to access the internet, but the main ones on this computer were Mozilla Firefox and Internet Explorer.
Did the computer have any users that had their own icon?
The HP computer had two user accounts that a user would have created that did not come by default when the operating system was loaded onto the machine. Whichever user set up the accounts, one of the users was entitled owner, and the other user account is entitled Casey, C-A-S-E-Y.
Once you were able to process the HP using the EnCase program that you've described and look at these different parts of the computer, what was it that you were tasked to do initially?
Initially, I was tasked with a fishing expedition of tell me what you can find about a Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez, and is there any information on this computer that may lead us to where Kaylee is?
And how was it that you began your expedition into determining whether or not there were references to Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez or some variation thereof that would assist in possibly, at that juncture, locating Kaylee Marie Anthony?
With an examination of that type, the first thing I want to do is peruse through the user folders to kind of get a feel for how the computer is being used by the user or the users. I'll look at the desktop. That's a good place to start. I will look for the active files that are being used on the computer. I'll start at the desktop level usually and look to see what they're stored on the desktop. I'll look at the internet history to see where they're visiting on the internet, what web pages. I'll look in the temporary internet files to see what pages they visited. I'll look for phone numbers, resumes, phone books. I mean, any type of information that tells me who owns this computer, who may use this computer, and not a person particularly, but what person is using this computer and how are they using it? Are they online a lot? Do they use it for business? Is it a gaming computer? Sometimes we find nothing but games. So I'll try to get a feel for the users of the computer and how they use that device.
In doing that, were you able to locate any references to Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez?
I did locate references to Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez in the temporary internet files.
Are you able to determine the date and time those references would have occurred?
Yes.
How are you able to do that?
The temporary internet files basically are a record that your web browser keeps on your computer. When you navigate out to the internet, the web pages that you visit will copy themselves or cache themselves and save themselves in a file on your hard drive. And the reason for that is for speed. Computers are all about speed and how can it get you the data as fast as possible. So when you go out to the internet and you navigate out there, every page that you visit will save itself to your hard drive. So when I look at the temporary internet files area of that user account, I can see what web pages have been visited on there. For instance, if I type in, if I go to www.nascar.com because I want to read about NASCAR, that temporary internet page and that URL, that Uniform Resource Locator, will be stored on my hard drive, and I will have a record that I visited that site, so that when I go back to that internet site again later at some other time, that page will reload from my hard drive, and I won't have to go back out to the hard drive or out to the web wherever I had to get that from that server before. So the reference I found on July the 16th with Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez is a result of that temporary internet file cache being saved to the hard drive, and it records not only where I went, but the user account that went there, the date and the time that I went there. So that reference from July the 16th of 2008 is a result of that temporary internet file being cached to the hard drive.
All right. So how did the reference to Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez present itself in the temporary internet files?
There were several searches out on the internet done that I could tell, such as going to peoplesearch.com websites, high school class reunion websites. I believe there might have been a MySpace reference, all around the same time frame, I believe in the morning on July 16th of 2008. I found Google web searches also, referencing the name Zenaida Gonzalez, looking particular for an age range in Orlando and in Jacksonville for a person by that name within the age range of 22 to 29, either in Orlando or in Jacksonville, Florida.
Did you see any references anywhere on the computer to Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez prior to the morning of July 16th of 2008?
No, I did not.
You said that part of the process of just gathering information from the computer is trying to assess the general usage of the computer. Did you come to any conclusions about how much use this computer got?
I did. The computer it appeared to be on and running a good bit of the time. It appears the users of the computer didn't do much office type work. I didn't find too many documents. I found several resumes of Mr. Anthony's. I didn't find any wills and testaments or anything like that. I did find some personal paperwork I believe belonged to the Anthony's, but not a whole lot of business type or school. Maybe a college student. Didn't find any homework assignments, anything like that. I did find a lot of internet history. In fact, the Windows Internet History temporary internet files, the longest I found were about 4.5 years worth of internet history. So it appears that they never really cleared their internet history very much either.
How would that be done on this machine? How would the internet history be cleared? Is it specific to a particular browser?
Yeah, you can right-click on the properties or internet properties and clear the internet history in the cache.
Do you have to do that for each of the browsers that you mentioned, the Mozilla Firefox?
Yes, if you clear your internet history for Microsoft, it will not clear the Firefox browser.
And how about, you mentioned Safari?
It's the same thing. You would have to go individually into each program and clear the cache from that program.
Once you clear that cache from whichever browser you are utilizing, what happens to that information? Is it just disappear?
No, it gets saved to an area on the hard drive called unallocated space or deleted space. But until it is overwritten by some other data, it resides still on the hard drive.
So how long could something stay in unallocated space?
It depends on the usage of the computer. It depends on how full the computer is, the hard drive is, rather. If there are a lot of files being deleted and then recreated on top of the deleted files, they could disappear rather quickly. In some cases, that information could stay for years.
If you have this free space available on your computer, the unallocated space, and it is written over, can you ever retrieve the data that is underlying
No.
what writes
No.
over it?
No.
What is a keyword search?
The software that we use, Encase, has various functionalities that enable us to search gobs and mounds of data, which are typical of hard drives today. And the keyword search is the functionality of Encase that allows me to basically ask Encase, if I plug in the word NASCAR and I say, hey, search every bit of this hard drive for the word NASCAR, it will literally go through every bit on that hard drive looking for that word, if you will, of NASCAR. I can instruct Encase to only search one file or one folder or one section of the drive if I like.
Were any of the user accounts on the computer password protected?
There was one on the HP. The owner user account was password protected, required a logon user password.
Were you able to determine what that password was from your evaluation of the unit itself?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and what was that password?
RICO 23, RICO, and the numbers 2 and 3.
Are you able to determine through the process of your evaluation when that password was set?
Yes. I apologize. There's a lot of information in this report. I believe it was set earlier in the year on 2008, if I'm recalling correctly. I was just trying to verify that. I believe it was earlier in the year, maybe March of 2008, I believe.
All right, let's skip over that.
Okay.
The internet history on the HP. How do you evaluate that?
That's a complicated question. In what sense? The internet history or the temporary internet files that I referred to earlier?
Are they different? Are they two different things?
The internet history is a record of the website that you visited, and the temporary internet files are the actual content of the page that you visited. So there's a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
the way I would have evaluated the internet history, I would have copied those files out from Encase and examined them. In this case, I examined them with another software tool called Net Analysis, which basically puts all of the temporary internet files, the history files, and the cookie files into a spreadsheet that I can manipulate and look at however I want to look at them, either I can sort the page by date or look at them basically in any way I want to look at them. And that's what I did in this case. I would have exported the history out into Net Analysis and examined it through Net Analysis.
Right. Is Net Analysis another forensic tool available to you?
Yes.
All right. Is it one that is commonly used in the computer forensic field?
It is, yes.
All right. Has it been determined to be a reliable tool for the evaluation of data?
It is, yes, and it has been.
Can you tell, either in the temporary internet files or in the cookies or in the internet history, which user, meaning you said there were two users on the computer, which user is making the search?
Yes, the internet history database is
Assumes facts and not in evidence. I believe the witness testified to two user profiles, not users.
Overruled.
The temporary internet files database will record which user account is logged in and active at the time the search was conducted, so that's what it's recording, as opposed to an individual user sitting at the keyboard, which obviously it couldn't know. It can only know what user account is active at the time the search is conducted.
All right. But the temporary internet files will record what user account is being accessed at the time.
That's correct.
Is that also true with the internet history?
Yes,
How about any of the cookies that appear?
that's correct.
What about once a file is, or files are deleted? Will the record associated with the deleted files tell you which user account generated that original search?
No, that information is no longer available.
Were you asked by Detective Yuri Melich to perform a keyword search for chloroform or any alternate spellings of that word?
Yes, I was.
When did that happen?
Sometime around August of 2008, I think late in August 2008.
And how was that keyword search performed?
In the same manner that the Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez keyword search was performed, I input that word into Encase, spelled correctly and spelled incorrectly, and came up with keyword search hits for both.
Was there a particular location on the computer where you were able to determine that the keyword search hits occurred?
Yes.
Where was that?
The keywords appeared in unallocated or deleted space on the hard drive.
Are you able to view the information then associated with those hits?
I'm sorry, am I able to what?
View any of the information that is in deleted space or the unallocated space?
Yes.
What can you see?
Well, because it's in deleted space, it's hit or miss as to whether you get an entire internet record or not. In this case, with the chloroform keyword search hit, we were able to recover a complete internet history from Mozilla Firefox. The complete history meaning right from the beginning of the code that begins the programming to create the page right to the very end of the page. So we basically got a complete Internet history record from unallocated space that had been deleted.
All right. You said that that is sometimes difficult depending on user activity. What did you mean?
Right. When we were talking earlier about overwriting deleted space with new files, there's always an opportunity when you delete a file, especially a very, very large file, that new data being saved to the computer will overwrite some of that data, some of the old data that was deleted. That did not happen in this case. We were able to recover an entire Internet history record.
Right. And how is it that you know it is an entire record? What is it about the information that makes you able to tell us that?
Because I turned it over to my sergeant, who is an expert in that area. I am not.
Objection, improper bolstering. To strike.
Sustain.
All right. So that information, you alerted another individual to the fact that after the keyword search, you had hits in unallocated space.
When NCASE reported back to me the fact that it found the word chloroform, spelled correctly or not, I was able to look at the language surrounding that word, and I recognized it immediately as an internet file, an internet database file. I looked around a little bit to see if I could figure out if it was Internet Explorer or if it was some other type of browser internet, but since I'm not that familiar, I was not able to determine that. I went back to the beginning of the record because I don't know where within a web page the word chloroform would have appeared, so it was just very difficult for me at that time to figure that out. So I found the search hit and I turned it over to my sergeant from there.
How does the turning over process occur, since this is data? How does that happen?
Basically, he shoulder surfs and oversees everything I do. We are within a few feet of each other in the lab every day. He copied that out. He'll have to testify as to what he did exactly, but he copied that information out to another source and then re-examined it on his own machine. Okay. and created the report from there.
All right. The HP was not the only computer that you evaluated through NCASE, correct?
That's correct.
Did you ultimately receive a computer purported to belong to an individual by the name of Ricardo Morales?
I did.
When did you receive that, and from whom?
I received a computer reportedly belonging to Ricardo Morales October 28th of 2008, and it was submitted to me by Sergeant John Allen.
What did you do to preserve any of the data that existed on Mr. Morales' computer as of October 28th of 2008?
The procedure for documenting and preserving the data on his hard drive was the same as the other computers that I examined. Removing the hard drive from the system, booting it into the BIOS and checking the system clock. And as I'm saying that, I think that was an Apple computer. And the hard drive was removed. That was a MacBook computer. The hard drive was removed and copied using the NCASE software.
Did you determine what the date and time were on the computer?
I did. The date and time that I removed the hard drive and checked the system clock was October 28th of 2008 at 3:24 in the afternoon. And the system clock on the computer that is set to October 28th, 2008 at 7:24 p.m., which would have been London time or Greenwich Mean Time. So I believe at that time of the year in October, there would be a time differential between our time and London time of about 4 hours.
If I may show the witness what has been introduced into evidence as States 12. There's a monitor. It looks like it's been turned. If you could just turn it to you. Well, it's in evidence.
Got turned off as well.
May I publish the item to the jury during the witness's testimony since it's already been introduced?
You may.
Can you see the image in States 12 and evidence displayed on your monitor?
I can.
Were you asked to determine whether or not that image appeared anywhere on Ricardo Morales' computer?
I was asked to do two things on his computer. I was asked to perform keyword searches previously performed on other computers, and I was also asked to look for any pictures of Kaylee that I could find wearing a pink T-shirt that had specific writing on the front of it.
All right. Were you able to locate States 12 in evidence?
Yes, I was.
How did you locate it?
I located it by searching all the graphic files, the picture files on the computer. I'm sorry, I don't know that I did. I don't know if I recognize that one or not. I don't have that computer printed. If you can, I'm sorry, I don't have that report printed out. I have it on a disk. I do not have a paper printout of that.
You may.
While we're looking for that, can you tell the jury whether or not, once an image is located in the graphic files, whether there's any way to determine when the photograph was taken?
Yes, the same process that I explained earlier with the Nikon Coolpix camera, with the information that's embedded into each picture file is embedded by the camera itself into the file. Once that picture file is saved from the digital camera to the computer, that embedded information stays in with the file, so I'm still able to view that.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the photograph that you have currently displayed, remember the previous instruction that I gave you concerning the bruise under the eye of Kaylee Marie Anthony, that it was not a result of any abuse or anything of that nature. Okay, you may continue.
Thank you. Detective Osborne, have you been able to locate the printed information that you had contained on disk regarding the photo displayed in States 12 in evidence?
I have located it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was this photograph among a collection of photos that were given to you on a thumb drive by Detective Yuri Melich as originating from the Globe?
Yes.
Were you ultimately able to determine whether or not the photo in 12 that was on the thumb drive was on Mr. Morales' computer.
I was, and it was located on both. I found them they were on the thumb drive and on the computer.
Now, you had testified about the ability to determine when a photograph is taken based on data embedded in the photograph.
Correct.
Were you able to determine, based on embedded data, when the photograph in States 12 was taken? Just give me the day, month, and year.
The day, month, and year that the camera was set to when it took the photograph was January 28th, 2008.
All right. And when you say the camera, the date that the camera was set to, you didn't actually have the camera available to you to determine whether or not the settings were consistent with the current time.
I did not. It was not submitted for analysis.
If I could show the witness States 13 in evidence and permission to publish to the jury at the same time.
You may.
Can you see that?
I can.
Right. Was this photograph likewise provided on the thumb drive by Detective Yuri Melich?
At this time, as to the dates indicated.
Approach the bench.
Yes, sir.
Objection overruled.
Detective Osborne, do you recall my last question?
About the date and the time?
Not the time, the date that the photograph in States 13 was taken. Oh, the date that the camera was set to when the photograph was.
Yes, the date the camera was set to.
I think that question goes to the witness testifying about the camera, not the photograph that it was
Let
taken.
me start over.
Yes, rephrase the question.
All right. Do you recognize 13 in evidence?
Yes.
All right. Did that photograph appear on a thumb drive provided to you by Detective Yuri Melich?
Yes.
Were you able to identify the same photograph on Ricardo Morales' computer?
Yes.
Can you tell from the information provided by the computer what type of camera took this photograph?
Yes.
Okay. Was that information embedded in the photograph itself?
Yes.
What type of camera took the photograph?
A Canon PowerShot SD870.
Was other information embedded in the photograph?
Yes.
Is the information related to the date and time that the camera was set to when the photograph was taken embedded in the photograph?
Yes.
What date and time, what date? You don't need to give me the time. What date was the camera set to when the photograph was taken?
March 19th, 2008.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no other questions of the witness.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, ma'am.
Sir.
It's Sergeant Osborne, correct?
Detective.
Oh, detective. Okay. Sorry. Detective Osborne, I just want to clear up a couple things with the users' profiles on the computer. Okay. There are 2 profiles on this computer, correct?
User-created profiles, yes.
And that doesn't mean that only 2 people are using this computer, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, there are various searches on both profiles, are there not? Various types of searches?
Internet searches?
Yes.
I would assume so. Yes, I found searches.
And there could be multiple users using one profile. Is that correct?
Correct.
And a password only means something if, one, that person's not told anyone else what the password is, right?
Correct.
And 2, the computer is turned off after that password is utilized and computer activity is done.
Okay.
All right. Is that a yes, sir?
Yes.
All right. So if I have a password protected area, which is the owner portion of the owner profile, not the Casey profile, right?
Yes.
If I'm using the owner profile and I log in, and the computer stays on, and it just, I guess, goes to sleep or whatever, I don't have to relog the password in, do I?
It depends on the setting on the computer. If the computer hibernates or sleeps or in some form or fashion resets itself, the password can be set to reset itself after a minute or 30 minutes or 5 hours or all day. It depends on the setting on the computer.
But you don't know or can't testify as to any of that information, can you?
I didn't ascertain that on this computer, no, sir.
Okay. So as far as you know, someone could type in the password, leave it on, and anyone else can come use the computer and not have to enter in a password.
As far as I know, that's correct.
And you mentioned that you had done a keyword search for chloroform. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you have the date and time that was run?
I believe that was around August the 20th. I don't know that I did the exact date, but it was around August 20th or shortly thereafter of 2008.
But do you have the date and time that you believe these searches were run?
That would be incorporated in the temporary internet file history, which I did not examine. My sergeant examined that, so I can't testify as to that.
Okay, so you have no information on that area.
Not that I'm prepared to testify to, no, sir.
Understood. And what we were talking about as far as the camera was concerned, you never saw the camera.
Which camera?
The camera of the photos that we showed the jury just recently.
The Canon PowerShot?
Yes.
I did not see that camera, no.
Okay. And you don't know if the time settings were correct.
Nope.
In fact, you don't know if this person even bothered setting the time when they purchased the camera.
I do not.
And many people are a little, many people find setting the time on like VCRs and cameras somewhat difficult, do they not?
Sustained.
If you know, ma'am.
Sustained. Next question.
Does every camera that you inspect and every computer have the exact time set?
No.
I believe it spans the time from March 4th, 2008 through March 21st.
2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Utilizing the tool that you referred to, cashback, is that something that you did yourself?
Yes, I did.
And what information is provided in cashback that was not available in another tool that you had at your disposal?
Primarily, the single largest difference was its ability to show me the dates and times correctly, regardless as how I set my computer. So instead of one half always being an hour off, I got all the records to display correctly, no matter what, whether they were standard time or daylight savings time.
Did you also make a request of Mr. Bradley, the individual from Cashback, to review the data file that you had carved out of the hard drive?
I provided Mr. Bradley with a copy of the file that I had extracted, and he subsequently examined it and provided me with a statement as to his findings.
Were you able to filter information out of the history from 3/4 to 3/21?
I did. I created 2 reports for, I believe, March 17th and March 21st.
And why were those dates filtered out?
Those dates contained information relating to chloroform searches as well as other searches that were done on the internet in Mozilla Firefox.
All right. May I have a moment?
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as states OL for identification. Have you take a look at this composite exhibit and tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is the report from March 17th that I generated using the cashback program.
Let me show you what's been marked as OM for identification and tell me if you recognize that.
I do. This is the cashback report that I generated for March 21st.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I would seek to introduce OM and OL for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections.
You received an evidence. The states numbered.
Case OL will become stage 165, and ON will become stage 166.
You said that the information was provided to Mr. Bradley.
That is correct.
Okay. In what form?
I gave him a copy of the file that I did my examination on, and then he used that same file to do his findings on.
Was the copy that you provided to him an exact copy of what had appeared in the unallocated space of the HP computer?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no other questions of the witness at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Please, the court. Ms. Drain. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Sergeant Singer.
Sir.
I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, starting off about unallocated space. First, basically, you're talking about deleted internet history, right?
This file would constitute deleted internet history, yes.
And you don't know when that history was deleted?
No, sir.
In fact, and you don't know anything surrounding the circumstances of why that one would delete their history?
That is correct.
And if your computer's running slow, sometimes you delete your internet history, do you not?
That is correct.
And that's a common method that people use to make their computer go faster?
It is one of the methods, yes, sir.
One of the many things that people do.
Yes, sir.
And these searches were done months before Kaylee Anthony went missing, correct?
This would have occurred, as I said, the dates from March 4th to the 21st.
Which was approximately 3 months prior to her going missing. And the search for chloroform, the very first one that you have shows up at 143:41, correct?
I would actually have to look at those reports to get the exact
Please
date.
go ahead and do so. Thank you.
Approximately what time did you say?
1:43 p.m. and 41 seconds.
That would actually have been 2:43:41 on the 17th.
Got it. So it's an hour.
The hour
difference.
off.
Okay. Now, the next computer activity that you see for that is would that be some kind of an ad or something like that?
The very next entry is an ad, that is correct.
Okay. And what entry comes up and the time for that?
2:43:48.
So we're talking about a period of 7 seconds that a person is looking at, or that the screen is showing something dealing with chloroform, and then it goes to something else.
No, sir. If you go to something like CNN.com, you might notice that or any other large commercial web page, you might notice that there are advertisements running all over that page. What your internet history is or can record is the fact that a lot of these ads are appearing from other websites, and the history record is recording that it is downloading that commercial or that advertisement from another site. So even though you haven't navigated off of that page, your computer has obtained the information from that website and placed it in the record.
Of course, you brought this out from the reconstructed this from the unallocated space to make certain of that, right?
Well, the history record comes from unallocated space.
But you can also extract that page and reconstruct it, can you not?
Under some circumstances you can, but under this circumstance we could not.
Okay. So you don't know what the screen was showing.
There is no way that I could know what that screen was showing.
So it's possible that this person, or whomever it was that was looking at the chloroform, 7 seconds later they were looking at something else.
I would have to say from the address that they did not go to another website, that was simply an ad which appeared on the screen.
At 1:43:59, do you see it go into another address?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what address was that?
Well, 4351, it's going to MySpace.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. You're right. So at the very least, we're talking about, or at the most, we're talking 10 seconds someone was looking at that.
Yes, sir.
So someone is looking at a screen that says that mentions chloroform, and then 10 seconds later they're at MySpace.
Oh, somebody did a search, a specific search for the term chloroform, and then subsequently went to a different website.
Which is MySpace.
That's correct.
Are you aware of defense evidence 1? May I approach the witness?
You may.
Have you ever seen that photo?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is your understanding that photo is?
I've seen the photo.
Are you aware that photo was on Ricardo Morales' MySpace page?
Yes, sir.
I think based on the direct, those are all the questions that I have that aren't outside of the scope.
You want to retrieve your exhibit?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Sergeant Singh.
Redirect.
Just one question, I believe. Sergeant Stenger, why can you not reconstruct the page that is appearing in the deleted or unallocated space?
When you go online and you're surfing through the internet, what happens when you go to any particular website, where you went is recorded in a history record, such as what we're discussing here. In addition, all that material that's displayed on your screen, the web page, the pictures, any movies that are on it, sound, is all placed in a separate area. It's often referred to as the cache or temporary internet files. And it's dropped into these folders so that your computer can rebuild what you're seeing on your screen. The difference being is that the record of where you went is kept in one place, and the contents of what you saw is kept in another. What you're seeing can be very complex. It can have a number of different files in order to display whatever it is that you're looking at. And when you delete that information, I may be able to recover the history, but the chances are I may not be able to find all the records and all the files that go into actually reproducing that web page as you saw it on that day.
Is to your knowledge, is the cashback program able to rebuild that?
Cashback can rebuild web pages, but only from what is called allocated space, where, in other words, the books are all on the shelf. It can find all those files and folders. It can then rebuild them for you. The program cannot extract all those files and folders from unallocated space. And of course, if they were overwritten, it couldn't recover them anyway.
All right. That's all the follow-up I had, John. Thank you.
Any additional questions on those issues and those issues alone?
Since you can't reconstruct the unallocated space or these pages, you don't know if some of these searches are from blogs or websites that, other than the recognizable ones, you don't know the authors of these websites, do you?
From the history line, you can look at it and you can tell where that keyword search was run from. In the one that you were discussing, sir, it was run from Google, and it was a search that was specific for chloroform.
My question to you, though, is talking about the searches.
Yes,
Since you can't reconstruct the pages, you don't know what was actually written there.
I can't tell you what was displayed on that page when it came up. That is correct.
And you said can't, right?
I cannot.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, sir.
May the sergeant be excused.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Sergeant. You may be excused, sir. Thank you. State may call their next witness.
John Bradley.
Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
My name is John Dennis Bradley, Dennis for my middle name, Bradley for my last name.
Thank you. Sir, how are you employed?
I'm self-employed.
In what capacity?
I'm the owner of SciQuest, a software development company.
And how long has that company been in existence?
Officially since 2001.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, education, employment prior to the formation of the company?
I'm a former law enforcement officer in Ontario, Canada. I was employed with the Durham Regional Police Service from 1988 through to and including April 2006. I spent 10 years in uniform, and then I was transferred into the Major Crime Branch, where I led the Technological Crimes Unit. My background in training involves several courses at the Canadian Police College in relation to computer forensics. I attended the Canadian Police College for advanced investigator training, as well as professional training outside of the law enforcement community.
Okay. That takes us up through what year?
That spans up most of my career. In 2000, I was transferred into major crime. In the year 2005, after spending 5 years in that unit, conducting several investigations, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, at which time I was transferred back to uniform in charge of a platoon of officers in another division. Following a 10-month period, approximately, I left law enforcement and took up a position with the Scotiabank as a director in charge of technological crimes and investigations. All during this time, I had started a software development company in 2001 under a different name. At that time, I believe it was called Armor Data, and it was in a purpose to distribute software that I had begun developing while I was a police officer. And at the time that I was now with the Scotiabank, I found that banking was not of interest for me, and it didn't fulfill my desires to further my abilities in the computer forensic industry. So I quit the banking field, and I subcontracted for a couple of months doing computer forensic investigations involved in criminal defense, criminal prosecution, and litigation. And after about 2 or 3 months, I decided to form a full-time business. I renamed Armor Data, which was a part-time business, to a full-time business conducting primarily computer forensic services for litigation purposes, and a smaller focus on the software development, which was continual throughout that whole period. Approximately 2 years ago, the increase in demand for my software actually made me change the focus of the company to do about 95% software development and training in the field of computer forensics and 5% on actual professional services.
In connection with your employment as a police officer in Canada, did you ever have the opportunity to testify as an expert witness in the field of computer forensics?
Yes, I have.
Okay. In what jurisdictions besides those in Canada?
It would be the only ones I testified were within Ontario, Canada.
Okay. In connection with your company, have you had the opportunity to testify as an expert witness?
Yes, I have. On a criminal defense case in the city of Toronto. That was approximately 2 years ago.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, I would tender the witness for voir dire or submit as an expert in the field of computer forensics.
No objection, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the witness will be accepted as an expert witness in forensic computer analysis. You may continue.
What sort of software have you developed that allows the interpretation of internet search history?
I have a product called Cashback right now. Its main focus is for the analysis of internet cache and history and cookies in relation to the browsers commonly used today by people to surf the internet.
Okay. Can you give us an explanation of what the cache is?
The cache is spelled C-A-C-H-E, which is a play on terms. It's stored or hidden copies of information when you're actively on the internet. The internet cache is a temporary folder or series of folders, ideally, to store information to make it easier and faster to navigate the internet so that the browser can look to the cache to see if it can fulfill a request much more quickly than having to go back out onto the internet to get that information. The purpose of the software is to extract that information, in many cases decode certain information within those files, and present them in a fashion that an investigator can investigate the actual information and draw opinions, inferences, or conclusions about what has taken place.
Does the cashback program that you've developed compensate for time changes?
Yes, it does. A lot of the components or properties within the cache and history are stored in a variety of different time formats, which are generally stored in Universal Coordinated Time, or GMT, and that conversion process has to then account for time zones, particularly where the actual offense took place. So my software does take that into account, and it's a configurable option.
Do you do teaching?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Give us a little bit of background on your teaching experience.
While I was still a police officer, I spent 2 years instructing NCASE Advanced Internet Forensics for Guidance Software, a California-based company. I did that for approximately 2 years. I instructed law enforcement, private sector, corporate individuals. After that actually was along the lines of the time I actually left policing to go to the bank. I have developed a forensic course for our local community college, Durham College, and instructed that for 1 semester. I have also developed my own training curriculum for my software. It's called Advancing Internet Forensics. I've instructed several courses over the last 2 years for that to several law enforcement government agencies. And I also am sometimes a guest speaker at events such as techno-security conferences and techno-forensics.
In connection then with your teaching engagements, did you teach the advanced computer forensics regarding your cashback program to members of the Orange County Sheriff's Office sometime in the last 2 years?
Yes, I did. December 8th, I believe, to the 10th of 2009. I was in Orlando at the University of Central Florida. They have a special lab there for the U.S. Secret Service, and I was instructing a course at that time.
Okay. Did you meet an individual by the name of Kevin Stanger?
Yes, I did.
Did Sergeant Stanger ask you to take a look at a data file?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Tell us about the item that he asked you to look at.
Sergeant Stanger indicated to me that he had a file on a thumb drive that was part of an investigation. The information in that file was recovered contiguously from a hard drive in relation to a matter. And he explained to me that the
Exception.
Your Honor, this is an expert witness. He's utilizing information provided as to the history of the file that was given to him in order to evaluate and complete his analysis. He's allowed to rely on hearsay information initially to start that procedure.
Objection overruled.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question now.
I think I generally asked you what information was given to you and what you were asked to do with it.
He explained to me that what was of interest within this block of data, he explained 2 things. Number 1, the block of data was apparently from a Firefox 2. This is a type of browser, and the 2 being the version number. There are certain characteristics about that made him come to that conclusion, and he explained that to me. Within the body of the information he recovered, there was some plain text information. And one of the key words that were of interest to him that he explained to me was of interest was the word chloroform.
Now, you said something about contiguous information. Why was that important to you?
The importance of information being contiguous relates more importantly to the location on the hard drive where it was recovered. In this case, an area of the hard drive commonly referred to in the forensic industry as unallocated clusters simply means it's a portion of the hard drive that is not being used and is not allocated for use for any file. Information that is deleted ends up in this area of the hard drive and is subject to being overwritten, either sooner than later, sometimes not for a long time. And what was interesting about this information was that the header, the beginning signature of that data block, and the contents within the footer in between was apparently all intact. Why that is important is when you find information in unallocated space, the number of contiguous allocation units, the greater the number, the less likelihood you'll get an intact file. In this case here, a number of clusters had to have been allocated for this file, this data block, and I was impressed to learn that it was all intact.
How was the information actually provided to you? I believe you referenced a thumb drive.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you examine the contents of the thumb drive?
I copied the contents onto my forensic workstation that I had with me at the time, and I believe I returned the thumb drive to him, and I worked from the workstation or the laptop from that point forward.
Were you able to verify the information that was initially provided to you as to what they were looking at when you reviewed the file?
Yes, I did. I initially conducted a cursory review to get a visual appreciation as to how the information was organized. And from a visual perspective, taking my time to scroll through the entire file, it appeared to be correct, and I was able to locate a keyword, chloroform, within the body of that information.
Okay. Now, you had, in the earlier part of your testimony, referenced the header and the footer that was part of this contiguous bit of information. Was that replicated on the data that you copied?
That information was present, yes.
What was the size of the data file that was retrieved from the unallocated space?
I recall the file being approximately 3.2 megabytes or 3.2 million bytes. A byte would be equivalent to a character.
Were you able to draw any conclusions about the deleted file from its size?
The conclusion or my belief at that time was that based on the size of the file and the fact that it was recovered from unallocated space, a level of inactivity in some fashion must have taken place for that information to not have been overwritten. Now, I'll qualify that by saying that other factors come into play about when data in unallocated space is actually overwritten. It varies from the use of the computer by the users or user, the size of the hard drive, and the number of applications that are being used, and how much disk space is actually currently allocated to the operating system. But based on that information, I was impressed to find that it was actually recoverable.
Is there any way, given the information that was provided to you, to tell when that Internet History record was deleted?
I can't say when it was deleted.
Do you know if Mozilla Firefox has any automatic deletion of its Internet history once it reaches a certain size or a certain date?
The browser will not delete the entire history when it reaches a threshold. That version of the Mozilla Firefox browser did not come with any automated or pre-default privacy mode either.
All right. From your answer, can we conclude that the history would have had to have been deleted manually?
Yes.
Once you did your preliminary review of the information provided to you, what was your next step?
My next step was to, within the development environment of the software I happen to have on my workstation, run it through an enormous number of tests to try and figure out what the issues were that it couldn't be originally parsed or decoded. So over the course of the next 3 days, I actually spent a lot of time looking at it in a very small piece of information at a time to see what were the characters that I needed to deal with to try and decode it. And essentially, I spent a lot of time trying to understand how this was different from anything else and work around that from a development perspective to decode it.
All right. After spending that period of time with the information, were you able to parse or decode it?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And how were you able to do that?
I was able to write or improve the functions within the software to deal with some anomalies that were present in this file and run it through a number of repeated tests to make sure that it was parsed. I was able to corroborate the work that I had done using a third-party reliable software to account for all of the markers that would tell me how many records I should be finding.
Does the cashback program generate a report?
Yes, it does.
If I may approach the witness.
You may.
Show you what has been introduced into evidence as states 165 and 166. Would you recognize 165 in evidence as a portion of the cashback report filtered for the date of March 17th of 2008?
Yes, I recognize this as a cashback report with information dated on that date. Appears to be a cashback report.
Same for 166 in evidence. Do you recognize that as the same filtered for the date of March 21st of 2008?
Yes, with the exception of one entry at the start for the 20th.
May I publish 165 in evidence to the jury during the witness's testimony?
You may. Any objections from the defense?
It's being entered into evidence, though, isn't it?
I know. It's already in the evidence. I thought maybe you may have some additional objections. Just asked. I'm just wondering whether or not you have any additional objections.
None, sir.
Okay. You may publish.
We could zoom into the first entry on the report. All right. Mr. Bradley, can you tell us what is displayed at the top of the report and what each of those items mean?
I have a portion that seems to superimpose over top of a report. Is that the portion you're referring to?
Yes, the superimposed portion that we zoomed into.
This is a single row entry in the report with some headers or column header information. The first column is an index. It's simply a value that numbers all of the results. The URL ID is a primary key database value to correspond to the actual file that now houses the decoded results. The type column is a visual representation of the type of browser from which the data was extracted. The visits column represents the number of times that particular URL was visited. The action date local is the converted timestamp to the local time as to when this URL record was accessed. The user column is in cases of where a user value has been extracted from the cache.
Would that be because it was in unallocated space?
No, the user value is reserved for Internet Explorer. It is the only browser that actually stores the user profile for the activity. By default here it's Firefox, so it will be blank. The web page title, if there was one associated to the URL, and then the actual URL or universal resource locator or web address, which relates to the record entry.
Okay. If we could go to, I believe it's entry 441. what information is being imparted by the cashback report as it relates to entry 441?
It appears that a web address or a URL, as defined here, http://www.google.com, was accessed on the 17th of March 2008 at 2:43 p.m. and 34 seconds daylight savings time.
All right. This number next to it, 92, what is that indicative of?
That's the number of times that particular web address or URL was accessed.
Accessed
Visited.
within what time frame?
In the scope or the parameters of the data that I extracted.
Okay. How does Google search work?
Google search. If you arrive at the Google homepage, there's a single text box to input keywords. Depending on how those keywords are entered, will help make your results more accurate, thereby reducing the number of results. By entering your keywords, you simply click on the search button, and the request goes out onto the internet to the google.com server. The parameters or keywords that were typed in are submitted along with your request. The request is fulfilled, and anything relating to the results is then sent back.
Would the result show in the internet history, the result of the search?
Yes.
In what format?
It would create another entry, a line item in the actual history.
Can we see the rest of the page? All right. Once that is accessed, the Google website, do the entries after Google is accessed provide us with any information about what search was conducted and when?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury how you can tell that through the use of this report?
By referring to the first line entry as an example, I see the term search that follows the google.com domain or URL. The question mark depicts keyword and value pairs that should follow, which are the conditions of the query, the conditions that you were asking to be fulfilled. In this case here, after the question mark, I see the term HLEN, followed by an ampersand. HL represents home language, and EN stands for English. The item that follows is SA equals X. I don't understand in this particular example what that would be off the top of my head. It's delimited by another ampersand, followed by, it's hard to see, I think it's a 0, is spell, looks like OI, and then spell. So the OI would be equal to spell. The following item is RES, and the value is number. And as you follow along, there's an ampersand Q followed by the word chloroform, and then lastly, ampersand spell 1.
Okay. So what information does this provide?
Some of this information, in fact, a lot of it, is provided by the server when the request is fulfilled. The important part about a Google search is the actual keyword value pair that starts with Q. In this case here, Q state represents query, and the value would be chloroform as you see it there. The ampersand spell 1 suggests to me that this was a value presented in the results that said, did you mean or do you want to look for this term instead of what you actually wanted to search for? That item was clicked on, and that produced this result here.
Does the next entry, which is 443, provide any different information to you?
Yes, it does.
Also,
I'm sorry?
How so?
The first thing that I remark is the exact value of the timestamps. They're identical. The Q condition in this case is chloroform spelled CHLORAFORM as opposed to O, and it does not end in the ampersand spell 1. This suggests to me that that was the first item entered as the keyword, spelt with the A in chloroform, which then produced the results above it.
I'm sorry, produce the results?
Above it.
Okay. All right. When you have entries that are showing as the exact same time, are they shown in some chronological fashion?
The report in cashback will sort first by timestamp and then second on the actual URL. It doesn't necessarily represent the chronology in which the events truly took place. The nature of web browsers and the internet is asynchronous. Therefore, one has to take a second look when the timestamps are the same and try and extrapolate some sense as to what took place.
Okay. If the timestamp is different, meaning that there's some distinction as we see with entry 444, which ends in 48 rather than 41, can we conclude that those are in the correct chronological order?
Yes.
Since the timestamp is different?
Yes.
Okay. Going then to 444, looking at that entry, can you draw any conclusions as to what that is?
This is a URL that has been added in behind the scenes for tracking the user's behavior or activity. In this case here, ad.doubleclick.net is notorious for tracking user activities, more for statistical and advertising purposes.
All right. Would that result in a pop-up, or is that just one of those cookies?
This would be a background information within the history itself.
Okay. Are those inserted at various points in time in the internet history?
They are inserted as they occur or as they are requested. Due to the fact that tracking software tends to be taxing or there is a time issue related to the tracking software sometimes calling home and reporting the information and then coming back. So it's not unusual to see some seconds gone by between different adwares or ad tracking software.
In this record from the 17th, do you see several examples of this sort of background information infiltrating, for lack of a better word, the internet search history?
Yes, I do. Item number 445, although I'm not familiar with that particular domain, it has the same characteristics of a tracking component to it.
If we could go to the next page. Is the entry at 4, I'm not talking about the time, I'm talking about the entry on the left column, 446, one of those background entries that you were just discussing?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So at 447, is that the same thing or is that something different?
I believe that is also the same thing.
Okay. How would that, since MySpace is included within there, how would that appear to the user?
This would not appear to the user necessarily as you see it. I would believe that a lot of this information is driven by cookies on the system, and when the adware recognizes certain types of information, it will respond accordingly. In this case here, there may have been auto login or something off to the side on the Google homepage in response to just the user's activity.
If we can continue to the bottom half of the page.
Excuse me.
Okay. In entry 456 at the very bottom, on March 17th, 2008, 14:45 hours and 30 seconds. Is that something happening in the background?
No, this appears to be a typed or a bookmarked URL.
Okay. And that is for?
Photobucket.com.
Okay. Is that the bottom of the page? Okay. Can we go to the next page, please? As we continue down this report, do you see activity on the Photo Bucket website?
Yes, I do.
Where at?
Items, I believe 457, 458, 459, 460, 461, and 462.
Once you get past activity with Photo Bucket, at 463 at the bottom, there's another entry at 1,453 hours and 25 seconds. What is that entry?
This states http://en, I apologize, http://en.wikipedia.org/wiki, WIKI/CHLOROFORM, chloroform.
What is that?
This appears to be a item in the search results from Google that were selected, and this caused the entry to be inputted into the history.
Is that the end? If we can scroll down on the page, including that entry within the search. As you continue down the report, entries 464 through the end at 471, can you tell us what's happening on the computer?
Just need a moment here to look at your timestamps.
Yes, sir.
At line item 2, number 464, it appears that another search results ending in alcohol at wikipedia.org was selected at 2:54 p.m. and 26 seconds. And by that process, actually, I will go to the next item, 465. It
Yes,
would
sir.
appear to me that that item was selected first. It is a URL that seems to support the search results, and by process of selecting line item 465, the return was item 464, the wikipedia.org URL ending in alcohol.
Okay. Can you tell us if 465 is a Google search utilizing a certain search term?
I believe what this is, and I'll actually go back to the original question about how a search is done. When you commit a search, information is brought back to you with results, and those results can have the same syntax or format as a query that you yourself created. And what that does is it recommits. If you click on a search result, it'll recommit that information as if you had typed it yourself to have that request fulfilled. And in this case here, The search results, as you hover over a hyperlink, it could be a picture, it could have a title of an article. Underneath there, the instructions will look similar to what you see here on the screen.
So looking at this history sequentially, can you tell us what the user was doing?
Yes. I believe at item 465 was a search result where the query value was alcohol. That returned the value listed in item 464. Can I point on this?
There is a annotation device on the screen. If you touch it, it will show up as a colored line.
This result caused that result. That result caused that result. This result caused that result. This result caused this result. And I believe this result caused that result.
Is this active user activity clicking through items that are presenting themselves on the screen?
Yes.
If we could go to the next page, if that is at the end. And we can clear this. All right, as we continue in chronological fashion, can you tell us what's happening on this computer?
The line item 472 may be another tie-in to the prior page.
Yes, sir.
Item 473 at 2:57 p.m. and 44 seconds appears to be a separate result that ended in a visit to wikipedia.org ending in inhalation. Similarly, 474 at 2:58 p.m. and 11 seconds, a result at Wikipedia also was created, accessing a file called death or value death. And as the chronology continues at 2:58 p.m. and 38 seconds at item 475, again, wikipedia.org, ending in self-defense. Can I draw on this again?
Certainly.
I believe this caused this result. Line item 476, one of the search results ended in the creation of the page that was displayed at the self-defense URL.
When you see in one of these lines where it says search, and then you have terms with plus signs between them, is that of any importance?
Excuse me. The plus sign is an encoding that's done automatically, and it replaces a space value.
Okay. Would that suggest to you that those are words typed in?
No, not necessarily. Okay. I believe what we're looking at here are auto-created links from the original Google search results. And again, by allowing those results to go out, fetch the information, come back, it takes on the same similarities as if someone created the query manually. So you'll see similar syntax with the question mark.
Okay.
In this case here, self-defense may have been an auto-created keyword based on users who might have typed in similar or related articles or keywords.
Okay. As we go down the page, can you tell us what's happening on this computer?
Yes. At line item 477, 2:58 p.m. and 58 seconds, a URL from the search results was selected Again, visiting the wikipedia.org website ending in RBSD.
Okay.
I believe it was line item 5 and line item 7. There was one item in between at the same timestamp as line item 5. So there's nothing else in between.
Okay. All right. So that's obviously the longest time anyone spent looking at chloroform so far.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And when you say the chloroform habit, can you read that the one that we're at now, that took 21 seconds?
Excuse me, yes.
Can you read the whole portion of what that says?
The URL starts with http://www.druglibrary.org/Schaeffer, SCHAFFER, /history,
Yes.
/E1880, /chloroformhabit.htm.
Okay. Did you look at that page at any time?
Matter of fact, last night I did.
Okay. And that's talking about somebody having a chloroform habit in the 1800s?
I remember the 1800, but I didn't read the article.
Okay. It's a blog, right?
It didn't appear to be anything more than just information. So I don't know if it was a blog, but there was information that seemed to be a person put it there.
Right. Somebody's writing about somebody in the 1800s having a chloroform habit.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And then how long before the next, what's the next page actually?
The next page, sorry, search.
Yes. Would that be the self-defense search next?
The only item I see on here is weapons out of household products.
Okay. And what time do you have that at?
3:21 p.m. and 56 seconds.
Okay. And that has to do with making weapons out of items at your house.
Well, it's suggestive of what it might contain. I couldn't tell you what it actually pointed to.
Did you look at that?
Nope.
Did the investigators let you know that somebody was making weapons in their house and that was relevant to them?
No, they did not.
And then after that comes the searches. What's the next search that you have?
Now you said search, just a search.
Yes. What's the next page that comes up?
I believe item 45 at 3:26 p.m. and 24 seconds, a Google search with the terms neck breaking.
Now, prior to that, do you have anything on Google books, self-defense for women?
I'll go back 3 pages and read each item. At this point, back to page 3 of the report. I don't see any references to a book, unless you can assist me.
That's self-defense for women?
Is that a question? sir?
Yes, I'm asking.
I cannot find anything here with self-defense for women.
Did you look that up to see what that was?
When you say that, look that
That
up.
specific entry.
Again, I'm trying to find the entry to which you're referring to. I'm not able to find anything about a book,
Okay.
unless you can enlighten me.
Sure. What line are you on?
Sorry, I was lost back there.
Sure. We left off here, right?
I'm actually working my way back to here. I think it might be another page or two ahead.
We'll go over these.
Because I think it was at 1526, if I wasn't mistaken. I have one more page to think about that. Is it up in there somewhere? I can break it.
Yeah. We'll go back. So
Okay.
we stay in chronological order.
Okay.
I don't have this, so I'm looking at it on a screen. Before we went there, we were here, correct? Making household weapons.
I believe so.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. Can you give me that entry that we were at, sir?
Certainly. Line item 15 at 3:21 p.m. and 56 seconds. Making weapons out of household products.
(3:21, 15, and 16 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After that, you have on entry 8401, blogger.com. Is that correct?
8407.
I have 8401 at 3:19 and 4 seconds.
I might believe that we are referencing two different reports. I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll just move further along because
Excuse me.
do you see at 3:23 and 8 seconds, themorningnews.org?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that exactly?
32308. The URL states themorningnews.org/archives/opinions/Kevin Fanning's Home Security Basics.
So, do you know what that site's about?
I have
other
no-
than home security basics
I have no
by
idea.
Kevin Fanning.
No, sir.
Okay, you didn't take a look at that.
That is correct.
And then the next one is
It starts with blogger.com.
correct. Does that reference preparing for zombie invasions?
Well, there's reference to those words. Zombies are coming. It's a very long URL. Hope you don't want me to read
And nobody told you zombies had anything to do with this case.
No, sir.
Okay. Now, all of these searches and all of this activity appears to be surfing rather quickly through the web. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, it depends specifically on the type of URL and the syntax of the URL as far as what's taking place. There's what you see in front of you taking place, and there's stuff that happens in the background. In order to attempt to compare these results and speak to this with some sense as to what's happening when and how, I might try to duplicate this step through. Unfortunately, being almost 3 years later, I doubt we'd have much success. But I couldn't assume that the one regarding morning news is, if I could repeat that, the morning news may very well be something that the user accessed, and the similar timestamp could be something that was made available on the website as a clickable option based on a cookie. Given the unique syntax of this, I don't know the defendant, but I couldn't know if that was selected or not. It could be something that was auto-inserted. And I base that answer on the fact that the two timestamps and the one following it are identical, as well as the one that follows that.
So what you're saying is basically there's only limited things you can tell from this information.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, if you go to 3, 25, and 37 seconds, that would take you to funny.com,
funny.co.uk.
and that would be funny household weapons.
That's how that is completed, that URL, yes.
And then subsequent to that, it looks like there might be some banner ads.
Yes?
Correct. And then you've got the neck breaking at that time. On
At
3/26/24.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how long is someone on that website before or after that query before they click fightingarts.com?
One minute and 54 seconds.
And that's a kung fu website, right?
I wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can only speculate.
Did you look at fightingarts.com?
No, sir, I wasn't asked to.
And all of these searches revolve around funny household weapons, using household weapons, self-defense, and fighting arts. That's all within the same sitting. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, with what we've covered so far, I would agree with that.
And then after that, you have the word shovel, correct?
Yes, Wikipedia.
Okay. Are you familiar with the movie Shovel?
No.
Are you familiar with any terms other than the literal meaning of shovel, right? Any other terms that is used for?
No?
Okay. Now, when talking about all of these, you were hired in 2009?
I was not hired.
You were consulted in 2009.
Yes?
And that was only a few months after this case came about, correct?
Apparently so. Yeah, well, excuse me.
I can tie it up.
Overrule at this time.
A lot of these websites would have still been active at the time, so you could actually go to the links and give a clearer understanding to the jury exactly what's on these websites, right?
I don't have any knowledge of when the computer was seized, but if it was any time within reason of the dates that we're looking at here today, I would agree with that.
Okay. So wouldn't the better evidence be when you're looking at household weapons, funny household weapons, making chloroform and things like that, wouldn't the better evidence be to show a jury the actual page as opposed to a link.
Sustain.
The link only gives you so much information, doesn't it, sir?
Yes, correct.
And in fact, the link doesn't tell you anything that was on that website.
That's correct.
And in fact, these websites could be, as some indicate, jokes,
Yes,
and some could be having to do with self-defense,
yes,
and some could be with kung fu,
yes,
and some could be having to do with chemistry,
yes,
some medical facts like the internal bleeding, the hypovolemia, and things like that.
yes, I would agree with that.
So there's a whole array of what these things could mean, or actually, let me rephrase that. There's a whole array of what these things could actually be that the reader is looking at, correct?
Yes,
And you can't even testify as to whether the user is even looking at this stuff.
that's correct.
Because sometimes people are texting while they're on the computer.
Sustain as to the last question.
A computer examiner can never testify that a person is actually reading what's on the page, right?
Not without a security camera watching over them, that is correct.
And a computer examiner could never testify as to whether a person got a phone call during any of these searches and directed their attention.
Same objection as to speculation.
Sustain.
At the end of the day, sir, the information that could be gleaned from these is very little without the actual pages. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that the information that can be gleaned from here can have great context depending on the circumstances and the information by the person reviewing the information.
Let's talk about context for a moment. You have 7 seconds, 1 second, 17 seconds, 2 minutes and 25 seconds, and 21 seconds total for chloroform, correct?
Well, those are the times that were seeded in the computer. I can't explain how often, or excuse me, how much time was actually spent reviewing the page.
Before the next page was selected.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, let's also keep in mind that we're talking about Firefox, and I have no knowledge about any other browsers or other programs that may be on the computer.
I'm sorry?
I have no other knowledge about other other cache or history analysis, other browsers. Windows, for instance, comes by default with Internet Explorer. Many people in my experience have used more than one browser. We're talking about Firefox all by itself.
I understand. So what you're saying is that someone could be, of course, looking at multiple browsers, and that would even lessen the time that we're talking about.
Yes, there's many explanations.
And we're really talking just a little bit over 3 minutes of time before in total, are we not?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And you were only given the computer, well, let me ask you this.
Excuse me.
As far as how many months were you asked to look at as far as the computer's concerned?
I was only asked to try and decode it, and in that process, I did my own attempts to validate at a cursory review that everything was at least properly decoded. I went so far as to confirm that chloroform did exist, and in that process, I had other items of interest that came to the forefront. Beyond that, I was not asked to do any continued review or experiments or so forth.
So the only dates range that you were looking at is the month of March?
Me looking at it in the month of March?
Yes.
I
Or
never
you
looked at
weren't
the
even
month-
given the whole,
I didn't look at it in the month of March.
okay.
I looked at the data December 2009, and in preparation for my testimony this week, I have since reviewed what I disclosed to the Orange County Sheriff's Office through Sergeant Stenger.
So you weren't even given the full month of March as to all of the computer activity to look at?
That is correct. All I have is what I worked with.
And So you can't even testify to this jury, out of this 3 minutes, how much time was actually used on that computer on the internet.
That is correct.
So if there's 50 hours or 250 hours, you can't really put into context how much that 3 minutes is in relation to how often not only one user, but multiple users were on the internet.
I think that is incorrect. I think what the history represents is a chronology of events that took place with the Firefox browser, period. Some items appear to be definitively a user-generated action. Some appear to be stuff that's happened in the background. To that extent, I can't disagree that this did not happen. Beyond that, I can't say how much time was spent using Firefox to look at an item any more than I can say whether other evidence exists in the case that I have not been privy to.
No one's saying that this didn't happen. What I'm saying is that if you take into consideration Firefox, Internet Explorer, Netscape, and the Safari browsers that were on this computer, you can't put into context how this 3 minutes is in compared to how many hours were on the computer during the month of March.
That's correct.
And in fact, this could be a very minuscule period of time compared to how much internet activity was actually done on this computer during the month of March.
Mrs. Stein?
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I appreciate it.
Any redirect?
All right, Mr. Bradley, starting off with the beginning of your cross-examination, the issue that Sergeant Stenger ran into was with decoding the deleted history from the Firefox browser, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. Why was he unable to complete that decoding, in your opinion?
There was scarce documentation available, and there was no tools in the industry available to do that.
All right. So when you were provided with this information, you were able to utilize the tool that you had already developed and add whatever other knowledge you had to complete the decoding of the entire history.
Yes, correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And you said that this event where you worked till 3 in the morning to complete that decoding took place in December of 2009?
I believe so, yes.
Were you familiar with the fact that the events in question took place in June and July of 2008?
I don't recall the date parameters except that it happened quite some time ago.
You had indicated that a lot of websites are dynamic, they're not static, they change very rapidly over time.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Would you include an 18-month time span within that time frame of having websites change dramatically?
Yes, websites would change in that time period.
Now, when Mr. Baez was going through the amount of time spent at each site, 7 seconds may be all it takes to type the word chloroform into the Google search engine?
Well, yes, that's possible, but I think in the context of Mr. Baez's suggestion, the search had already been committed, and the results were 7 seconds later.
Okay. So you type in the word, you hit search, and then it returns a result within a certain brief period of time.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you have options, do you not, whenever you put a search term into Google?
Yes.
Okay. And then the user selects options based on what Google returns.
That's correct.
Would it be fair to characterize this block of history, of internet history, as surfing the web for information about weapons and chloroform, how to make chloroform, those types of things?
Yes?
And when someone types in to a search engine how to make chloroform, maybe they're trying to figure out how to make chloroform.
Objection, Judge. Calls for speculation and leading.
Sustain.
Excuse me.
Now, when you're dealing with Wikipedia, all of the, I think you called them hyperlinks,
Yes?
don't necessarily keep you on the Wikipedia page, do they?
They tend to, but not always.
Can it redirect you to another page if you click on a link and Wikipedia might not have that information, but another website might have it?
Yes, absolutely.
And certainly you cannot tell from the internet history that you examined whether or not items were printed off of the internet for later review.
That's correct.
Can the content of any of the websites be derived from the internet history data that you discovered?
Can you rephrase or repeat the question, please?
There was some inquiry about what was actually displayed on the website at the time the search was made.
Right.
And you said the passage of time affects how that appears,
Yes?
how the website would appear. Can you tell from the internet history exactly what would have appeared on the website when you're looking at that history 18 months later?
No, I cannot.
Were you asked only to review this deleted history to decode it
Yes.
and to tell us, and ultimately the jury, what searches were performed for a particular time frame?
Yes, but I wasn't given any time parameters. I was just simply instructed to decode the entire file with some emphasis on a particular keyword.
The searches on 321 as a whole, from the first one that you mentioned to the last one that we talked about dealing with weapons and things like that, that whole time frame encompassed an hour, correct?
I believe so.
And if I may have the first page of
Excuse me.
the report from 321. Entry number 3, the www.scispot.com chemistry/chloroform. How many times was that site visited?
According to the history, 84 times.
Thank you, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Brief cross as to those issues and those issues alone. You may.
Would you be looking for this as well, sir?
I might be.
Okay.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Excuse me.
I'd like to show you your, actually, that's a copy of a report you submitted in this case, sir?
This is not a report that I submitted, but it's a report that appears to be created by somebody else.
Okay. And the site for SciSpot.com. How many times does it show that it was visited?
Could you assist me, please, in locating this?
Is that somebody else's report, sir, or is that your report?
It appears to be someone else's, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
May I get that?
Certainly.
Does this appear to be a cashback report?
Yes, sir.
And there are only one visit to SciSpot.com, isn't it? Correct?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 7 minutes before is Sergeant Stinger still in the building? He's needed in Judge LeBlanc's courtroom. Verify if he's still in the building, please. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 7 minutes to the hour 5. We will recess for the evening. I'm going to ask that you not to discuss this case among yourselves, nor with anyone else. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state or the defense?
Nothing from the defense. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Yeah, excuse until in the morning. Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll see you in the morning. They'll explain it to you. Okay, if there is there's nothing else, then we'll be in recess. To tomorrow morning. I need to see the lawyers at. Well, I can ask you this question. Hangover 2 and X-Men, any objections to those two movies? Mr. Mason, since you're the movie aficionado, any objection to X-Men or Hangover 2? Any objections from the defense? Okay. Okay, we'll be in recess.